All right, everyone. So I want to talk, we're talking about vector graphics today. You can either use Adobe Illustrator, or I know you're teaching Adobe Illustrator when it comes to vector graphics, or you can use Figma. So if you're going to use Adobe Illustrator, either A, you can use it at our school. You can go to any of the labs in the 900 building, which would be 905, 908, or 907. All of those should have Adobe Illustrator installed. If you have or you purchase the license, what you would want to do is go into Adobe Creative Cloud. Make sure that you are logged in. You can do that by going over here. So I'm logged into mine. If you weren't logged in, you'd want to log in with the one that you set up your account through for the set up the account for sorry, I'm having a complete brain fart for your Adobe license. And then you could click on or search for Illustrator. Oops, where am I? Creative Cloud. I already have it installed, but you would literally type in like, say, Adobe Illustrator. And, when this comes up, this is already open, but there'd be an install button here and you could install it. Okay. So at this point, I'm assuming you have the program installed. If you haven't, pause and do that. If you're going to be using Adobe Illustrator, I'm going to begin with just kind of the basic user interface of Adobe Illustrator. Um, let's go up to the top here. So this area at the top are the menus. Okay. Um, so menus similar to Adobe Photoshop have things like new, open, save as. You can do an export to convert to other formats like a raster format. Under edit, there's like copy, paste, things like that. The object menu has to do with vector paths, which is what I talked about in the previous video. Um, Type, which we're not going to really get into in this course, but you can work with different type aspects here. All right, so I'm just trying to move the drawing tools here. Over here is your toolbar, similar to how in Adobe Photoshop, there's a toolbar on the left side here. I have the advanced toolbar being viewed. Yours might look like this. For this class, this is probably fine. Actually, I take that back. You might actually need the advanced toolbar. You can go under window here and under toolbars, advanced. That would give you more tools. There's a couple of tools near the end that I think only exist in the advanced. All right, this is called your artboard. Your artboard is where you work. One thing that's a little bit different than if you were using Adobe Photoshop is when you're in something like Adobe Photoshop and you have images that go beyond the edge, you cannot see them. In Adobe Illustrator, if I have a vector path, so don't worry about what I'm doing at the moment, but I can have elements that are half on and half off of the document. In fact, I can have vectors that are completely off of the document. Okay. So this area around my artboard, this is referred to as the scratch area. The way to kind of think of it is, have you ever been like in an art class and they put like butcher paper down underneath your drawing? You kind of like sketch a little on the butcher paper kind of thing. It's kind of like that, where it's like you can put stuff here, but eventually when you save your document or you export, it's only going to work. The only elements that are going to be exported are those that are inside of the artboard. Okay. And finally, over here, these are panels. Panels provide additional information about the composition. This includes things like layers and eventually additional things like colors and swatches and stuff like that. I'm not going to get too deep into this. If you want to learn more about vector graphics through Adobe Illustrator, I very strongly recommend that you take the DIGM for a digital illustration class that is offered at Chabot. It's not necessarily offered every semester, but it is offered at least once per year. And that would definitely give you a strong understanding of how to use vector tools, and more specifically in the vein of getting experience with Adobe Illustrator. Today is kind of just, I'll be kind of touching on the basics because you kind of need at least a basic understanding before we get into Adobe After Effects. Because Adobe After Effects will use some level of vector graphics. Okay. All right. So, let's talk about. So, we talked in the last video about the differences between vector graphics and raster graphics. So, raster graphics, which are something that's built in something like Adobe Photoshop or Photopea, something that might be saved as a JPEG or a PNG, are graphics built with pixels. Okay. And as we kind of showed or explained in when we were dealing with that, if you blow up a graphic, meaning you enlarge it, it starts to distort for reasons of basically you are adding more pixels to your composition. And so when you enlarge it, what really happens is they copy the old pixels and paste those in, and the result is not good. Okay. Vector graphics, one of the benefits of vector graphics is that um, instead of building things out of individual pixels or squares, graphics are built out of lines. Okay. And so, for instance, if I was building a vector, you know, square or something along those lines, what vector graphics do is it's like, okay, we can represent this rectangle or square as a formula, okay, as an algorithm. So for instance, this formula for this path is X. Okay, let's just say that. And in math, anytime you have if you want to take something and increase it, you can basically do something like this, 2x, which would take whatever x is and multiply it by 2. Or I could do 3x or 10x, okay? 15x, whatever, okay? So what's nice about vector graphics is you can actually enlarge the graphic without getting the kind of distortion you would get from a raster graphic, okay? So if I were to go here into exercise 1, here I have the Starbucks logo. Over here on the left side, this is being saved as a image file, like out of pixels. It might be a JPEG. It's probably a PNG if I had to guess, but yeah, it's a PNG file there. Over here, this is the same graphic built out of vectors. I'm going to take both and I'm going to scale both up. All right. Let's do a little side-by-side comparison here. So when you take a look at this has been blown up at least 10 times its normal size, if not more. You can definitely see that the one on the left, which is which is raster based, is starting to distort, right? It's starting to see the stair steppiness, the little registered symbols basically, unreadable at this point. Like over here, the one that's vector based, that's the one that looks good. And because enlarging it does not affect anything. And in fact, I could take this and keep enlarging it as such. And it's still never losing its distortion because it's not based on pixels, it's based on shapes. In fact, you could actually go to view outline and you could actually view the individual shapes here. You see that? Whereas if this was like Photoshop or Photopea, this would be built out of individual pixels. Here, there are no pixels, there's just these lines. And each of these lines can be like, okay, here's a square, make it black. Here's a letter C, make it black. Here's a letter O, make it black, kind of thing. All right. All right, so let's talk about how to navigate in Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to go to the bottom of our toolbox here, and I'm going to grab the thing that kind of looks like a magnifying glass. This is the zoom tool, which works pretty much the same way the zoom tool in Adobe Photoshop works. So you can see the little plus sign here. I can click, 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 click to zoom in, hold down Option or Alt, and I get a minus here, and that allows me to zoom out. Keyboard shortcut, just like inside of Adobe Photoshop, would be Command plus or Command minus. When you're zoomed in, the way that you would move around or pan around your document, there's a couple ways to do this. One, there should be sliders. So I can slide up or down or left or right. You can also use the hand tool, which is down here about second from the bottom in our toolbox. And if I click and hold, I can move my document around. One thing is because it's very easy to, scroll away, so where I can't find anything, you might want a quick, easy way to be able to jump back and see the entire document, the entire artboard. The way you can do that really quickly is go to View, Fit Artboard in Window, or Command 0. And by doing that, it shows you the entire document. Okay. Just like in Adobe Photoshop, if you go under Window, you can open up a panel called the Navigator. If you remember, the navigator in Adobe Photoshop allows you to both zoom and pan as a tool. So here I have this is showing me the artboard. I can use this to zoom in. I could use this to zoom out. Once you're zoomed in, you can take your cursor, put it over the viewfinder here, and I could pan that around my document. Okay? All right, I want you guys to just try that out. Make sure you can open up Adobe Illustrator if this is the one. If you're using Figma, go to the videos about Figma. This is the different section here. But be able to, just navigate around. That was exercise 1 and 2, please.